Did you miss us? We missed you. We can't wait to talk about this Tuesday's election results. We've got an interview with Mr. Lee Carter. We've got a special guest host later in the show. The pod is back, baby, and we're riding in on a big blue wave. Here we go. It's the For Virginia Podcast. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the For Virginia Podcast. This is episode 23, excuse me. We are recording this on Sunday afternoon about 2 o'clock on the 12th, this Veterans Day weekend. Thinking about everyone who's served and wondering why Christmas has crept up so far. I guess we were at a Peninsula Town Center last night for a tree lighting ceremony, which was kind of unusual, bitterly cold. I guess it's better than having 80-degree weather in November. Love how Mother Nature waited right until Election Day to get bitterly cold. I don't know how it was the rest of the state, but here over in Tidewater, we were. It was raining most of the afternoon and was in the 50s. So great thanks to everybody that braved the weather to get out there and help organize and rally the troops. Obviously this election day was amazing. Democrats did so well across the state, swept the statewide offices, and looking at, I believe, 15 pickups, maybe 16 right now, in the House of Delegates. Obviously there's still a lot undetermined at this point with the race in Newport News with Shelley Simon. Last we heard, it was down to 13 votes, and we expect some lawsuits to be filed on Monday with regards to some absentee ballots and provisional ballots that were getting thrown out. Anyways, so great night all across the state. Danica Rome, obviously, I think is pretty much the high point. At least one of the people that's been getting the most attention across the country. Transgender woman who ran on traffic and unseated the state's leading homophobe, as Bob Marshall liked to call himself. Obviously, we've got the first Latina delegates with Elizabeth Guzman and Hala Ayala. No, I'm botching that, sorry. And Lee Carter, who apparently found democratic socialism while he was running and unseated the ranking Republican member of the House of Delegates, Jackson Miller. So kudos to him as well. He'll be joining us later. Don't have time to get into everybody. I know David Reed is another person who we know personally that made it through. And Kelly Fowler out of Virginia Beach. Don't want to forget her as well. And as someone who ran and lost, I want to congratulate and encourage everybody else that was not successful. Kellen Squire, Kimberly and Tucker, to name a few. It's we thought we had a chance, maybe a little more than we did, I suppose. But some of these other guys that we're running in some of these really red areas of the state. We might have jokingly referred to them as running kamikaze campaigns because of the area where they worked at and the fact that there was no way in hell that they were going to win. But I think everybody did their part to make sure that we challenge them where we haven't challenged them before. And I think one of the ways in which that worked not only drove turnout for Northam and Fairfax and Herring, but also kind of spread the money out, because some of these guys that are unchallenged every year and don't need to spend the money, give it to people in competitive races. And so we saw a lot of those guys that were forced to actually deploy their funds instead of sending them to somebody else instead. So I think that worked in our favor, and hopefully our success, and I mean that in the sense of the entire state, not myself, but our success statewide has given a lot of people hope across the country, has put Republicans on notice, especially members of Congress, like we saw with the resignation of Bob Goodlatte. I think it was Thursday he decided not to run. I knocked on a lot of people's doors, and I asked people, you're going to vote, right? And you made your decision yet? And I was surprised by how many people, especially minority people, who said that they weren't. And I told them, I said, well, here's two things that you should do to make up your mind. The first one is to look at all the bills that Governor McAuliffe vetoed over the past 4 years, and the restricting of absentee ballots, the voter ID restrictions, the funding of women's health clinics. Those are just a few that I can think of. The transvaginal ultrasound, for example. Look at all those things that Republicans tried to do, McAuliffe vetoed, and we were able to sustain that veto because we had just enough super minority, sustaining minority rather. And I said, ask yourself if that's what you want to see in the next 4 years. Because I told them, I said, if we don't hold the House, if we don't hold the governor's mansion, if we can't take back control of the House of Delegates, that's what they're going to do. And people listened. I mean, that was the argument a lot of people were making. The other argument was the standing up against racism and against white supremacy, because that was part of the campaign that Gillespie was running. That was, all this nonsense in Charlottesville that's been going on. And I told people, I said, we have to vote, because if we don't, it's going to empower these fools across the country. And hopefully people took notice. I think they did. But, one thing I want to talk about a little bit is this level of surprise at what Democrats accomplished on Tuesday. There was a couple episodes, I think Northam himself was at a dinner, speaking engagement or something like that, and Delegate Cox was the speaker, presumptive speaker rather, and Northam said something like, I look forward to working with you in the House of Delegates, and I was mad about that, because it was almost like he was discounting the possibility that such a thing could happen. And I remember about 3 weeks ago, maybe I was at a meeting of local tow truck drivers, and they had their lobbyist there, and he had made a similar comment, speaker to be Cox, and I got up there and I said, I tend to disagree. Democrats have the enthusiasm, and everything that we've seen across the country since Trump was elected indicates, record turnouts and a swing for the Democratic vote. And he said, if I had $1 million, I wouldn't make that bet or whatever, but maybe I'll run into him soon. I tell a story going way back to, I think it was 2015, I believe. It was between the the state Senate Majority Leader, Tommy Norment, and Dick Saslaw, I want to say, at CNU. I think this was before the last election in 2015. And Norment said something to the effect of, like, I don't think I'll ever see a Democratic or a blue House of Delegates in my lifetime. And I joke, challenge accepted. And we almost did it. We might still be looking at a tie. We've got two recounts left to go, so there's still hope. Who knows? We might have another retirement or something in the next year or two. My hope, what I'm telling people publicly, at least I'm saying it now again, I don't have any plan at this point to run again in 2019, but it is my opinion and hope that the numerous gerrymandering lawsuits, there's one in Wisconsin before the Supreme Court that I think they heard arguments late in the summer, early fall, that might come back to impact Virginia, which had, I believe there's two lawsuits, one for Virginia 2021, and I forget who the other one was by, but there might be only one of these cases now, but there is a good possibility, hopefully, that the courts will rule in favor of the challengers, basically saying that believe there's 13 districts, mostly in Southampton Roads too, and here on the peninsula, and then a couple around Richmond, that are packed with minority voters. And so I'm hoping, I believe, that that's going to come back in favor of the plaintiffs, and we'll see a redistricting. And hopefully this will come soon enough in the year that we'll be able to have a redistricting done in time for the 2018 elections, because I think that will give us even bigger gains. And coupled with the fact that we'll be having congressional elections, I think that's going to be really, really good for the state. I did see analysis somewhere basically saying that the Republican gerrymander did what it was supposed to do, because we should have won more than those 15 seats. We should have seen many more. And because of the way the gerrymandering worked out, it actually did protect the Republican majority stake for the most part. So I'm hoping 2018 we'll see that. I have told everybody that if we do have a redistricting in 2018, I will run again, especially if it goes back to something like the old districts where it was more of Hampton. Definitely, absolutely. 2019, I'm not going to say anything right now. I've got a long ways to go with that, but definitely haven't seen the end of me, and hopefully everyone else that was unsuccessful on Tuesday will stay involved. I know Kim Tucker will be. Kellen Squire. We'll be getting him on here at some point to talk to us about what his plans are. But yeah, it was a great night for Virginia. It was a great night for America, and I can't wait to see what our newly elected representative delegates are going to do for us when they get to Richmond this January. So we're going to take a quick break. Stand by, and we'll get back with the rest of the news and our interview with Lee Carter later. Stand by. This is the For Virginia podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the For Virginia podcast. This is Mike Wade, your host. We have an interview coming up with Lee Carter that we did earlier this afternoon. Before we get into that, though, I want to just pitch a little bit about what we're trying to do here. Please go to our website at forvirginia.org to get the show notes with links to the sources that we reference, and help us get the word out. Share us on social media. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we're on iTunes. So if you have an iOS device, please subscribe to the podcast, subscribe on YouTube, and hit the little alert button so you know when a new show goes out, and help us get the word out there. We have ActBlue and Patreon now to help support the show, because we doing this out of a labor of love, but we do have costs associated with it that we have to cover, and we do want to do more than we've been doing, and we can't do that without your support. So we are going to make sure that we're a force to reckon with in state politics and help organize across the state. So you can reach out to us on Facebook, email info@forvirginia.org if you're interested in helping. We are looking for correspondence or whatever you want to call it. We're going to have David Washington on here in the last part of the show as a guest host, and we're going to be bringing him back on. But we are looking to help get the word out across the state. So if you're in southwestern part of the state, if you're in Nova or Richmond or anywhere, and you want to let people know what's going on, you want to come on the show and talk to us about it, we're more than happy to do whatever we can to help. So send me a message. You can contact me on Facebook at michaelbrandonwade.com. Michael Brandon Wade. Just send me a message, and we can chat from there. So without further ado, here is my interview with Lee Carter earlier today. So, how you been?
Busy. I never in my life thought that the day after the election would be busier than the day of, but I thought I was like going to sleep in until noon, win or lose, but no, my phone started blowing up at 8 a.m. And I've been running on basically GOTV levels of sleep ever since.
Wow.
Which has to end eventually.
All right. Well, hopefully you can get off the phone with me and go get some shut eye, man. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy suit fitting schedule to give me a couple of minutes.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So we're live with Lee Carter, delegate elect. Congratulations. I was saying earlier, I think between you and Danica, I don't think anybody was more surprised. Between the two of you guys are more pleased. I was telling Stacy a minute ago that, you were running for probably close to 18 months, if not more, correct?
21.
Jeez. So, wow. All right. Well, it looks like all the hard work paid off. I was going back and forth with Ben Tribbett on Twitter yesterday. He said that there seems to be some kind of correlation between the amount of support that a delegate got from the caucus and the amount of crossover vote that they received. I think it was like an inverse relationship. But I think you were probably you were probably the outlier screwing up the data set there, because I don't think anybody worked harder than you, man. How many doors did you knock on the past 3 months? During GOTV, at least?
Geez. So for the last 4 days, we hit 21,000 plus doors.
How many volunteers was that?
18. We had about 100 that went through the coordinated campaign, and I had about 70 or 80 more that were just there for me that didn't like Ralph. So.
All right. Well, that's cool. I think most people saw the video of you singing "Solidarity Forever." When did you find the actual card carrying Democratic Socialist?
That was back in April.
Was it? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I never actually heard that song before I saw the tweet, so that was interesting. How far back does that go? Is that like a union thing that you were involved with in the past?
Yeah, so that's an old union hymn. It's I believe the official song of the AFL-CIO, although they don't really sing it very much these days. But it's kind of our thing.
I was kind of wondering. I went to several union meetings, and I'm surprised they never started out with that. So maybe we'll have to bring that back.
That would be good. That'd be really good.
So I think there was a lot of armchair quarterbacking the day after, trying to figure out what it was. You blew it out of the water. I think you were 9 points ahead, and obviously that success translated across the state, more areas than some, and where myself I'm a bit disappointed that I won't be able to join you in January, but we've got 14 new members that'll be coming with you. And what's the first order of business? I know that you've probably got to get your LA lined up. And what's the first piece of legislation that you're looking forward to putting forward?
First bill is going to be workers' comp anti-retaliation protections. So making it harder for terrible bosses to fire you for getting hurt. Because, in the construction industry, there's a very common phrase goes, if you fall off a ladder, you're fired before you hit the ground.
I was just thinking about that today. And I read it. I forget where I read it, but we've talked several times, in person and on this podcast, and I don't think I ever quite understood the depth of the injury that you experienced. Like, you were unable to walk for several weeks, correct?
Yeah. So for about 2.5, 3 months, I couldn't walk more than about 50 feet at a stretch.
Wow. Man. So beyond the sleep deprivation, you're making the media tour, and I'm sure it feels all very surreal at this point. I don't know, Lee. I'm just, amazingly impressed by what you did and what we all accomplished on Tuesday. I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me, and I don't want to take too much of your time today. Is there anything that you want to talk about, since, this is the first podcast we've done in about 7 months, and we're going to be ramping things up? You've got the air.
Yeah. So I think the big thing was the House candidates really did a lot of the heavy lifting. You see, if you look at the numbers, the districts where Republicans went unchallenged had roughly the same turnout numbers as 2013. But all the areas where there was a challenger to a Republican incumbent, you saw turnout go through the roof. So, it really helped having, in 90 some odd districts, having a candidate knocking on people's doors directly and saying, "Hey, I need you to vote for me." If somebody goes to vote for the bottom of the ticket, they're not going to skip everything to get there. They're going to vote for everything along the way. So I think that was a lot of the surprise factor. That's why Ralph had the margins that he had, despite the enthusiasm gap, was because people were enthusiastic about their House candidates.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. I'm waiting to see the analysis on that, because we were under the impression we were going to outperform, and I think we only met about 90% of Northam's turnout. Do you know what the numbers are in your district?
Yeah, so this is something you see all over the place. I think there were a lot of people that were going to go and vote for Northam anyway that decided to split their ticket and vote Northam and then the Republican. But the big thing is, for everybody that was excited about the bottom of the ticket, that's a free vote for Ralph.
Yeah, I gotcha. So, a lot of people have been asking me, like, what's next, and I know what's next for you. So I wanted to ask the level of support that you got from the House caucus. I mean, we all know how that went. So what other organizations helped out the most? I know Win Virginia, you were backed by them and you took part in all that stuff, I believe, right?
Yeah. So, big thing is this was a coalition that we put together. We had a lot of help from Sister District and Win Virginia and Flip Sisters and Swing Left and Democratic Socialists of America and Let America Vote and the Sierra Club. And we really, the list goes on and on and on. Forward Majority, which is a PAC that was set up by some former Obama people, they were also huge. So the big thing is we were able to set up a coalition that united, the economic left with the base of the Democratic Party in defiance of the Democratic Party's leadership. And we were able to leverage that to a great deal of success, mostly through the fact that, these were people that had more time than money. So they were out there knocking on doors for us left and right. We were able to knock on countless doors, and these people that were motivated. So they were out there asking questions. They'd knock on a door and say, we're here to figure out what issues are important to you. And, we went out there and we listened to people, and we used that to build our message. of building a Virginia where everyone can live and work and not have to worry about how they're going to put food on the table or make the rent, or whether they're one injury or illness away from disaster. And that showed, there was broad enthusiasm for my race among people who don't typically vote. So it all worked out in the end.
Yeah. I'm wondering what would have happened if I had another 16 months to work. I mean, yeah. I mean, God, I'll be honest with you, man. I'm jealous of the success that you had, and a lot of people have been telling me not to beat myself up over the work that we did. Part of me wonders like what I could have accomplished if I didn't have two kids and wasn't. Were you working full time while all this was going on, or?
I was at the start, but then for the last few months, I decided to stop taking new projects and just focus on the camping.
That's right, because you were consulting. So,
right.
Well, I'm sure your wife is happy to have you back for the next couple of weeks, if that's even the case. But
yeah, not really. There's not that much time these days. It's just I'm in the house more, but I'm on the phone the whole time. So yeah, it's better and it's worse.
Guilty. All right, Lee. Well, we'll let you go. Tell Stephanie we said hi, and maybe someday soon we can all get together for dinner or something. I appreciate you taking time to call me. Go get some rest, and we'll talk to you. We'll check in with you before the session gets started. How about that?
All right, sounds good.
All right, take it easy. Thanks.
All right, later, man.
Hello, this is Danica Rome, Democratic candidate for the 13th District of the Virginia House of Delegates, and you're listening to the For Virginia podcast.
All right, welcome back. We have a special guest host tonight, Mr. David Washington out of the South Side of Virginia. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
All right. Dave and I have been talking about doing this for a while, at least since before we stopped doing it. I guess 7 months ago now it's been.
Yeah.
So Dave and I met through the Perriello campaign. Were you doing field for him?
Yeah, I was running the field operations from on your side of water, Hampton going all the way up to William and Mary.
Yeah, I'm sure you were putting some miles on the car then, weren't you?
Absolutely.
So after the Perriello campaign, you started working for John Bell Jr., I believe, right?
Yes, sir. It was John Bell. He's running for sheriff in Virginia Beach, and I was running his campaign operations out of the coordinating office, out of my home office, out of his house. So that was definitely an experience to try to go toe to toe with the styling machine.
Yes, glad you mentioned that, because I definitely want to post a link about that in the show notes. For those of you outside of the Tidewater area that don't know about that family, I think they've got about 6 people in elected office over there. Sheriff,
his brother, I'm wearing this shirt of one of the people who knocked down one of his folks, my girl Kelly Fowler, and Cheryl Turpin knocked out his deputy, who was
that's right,
who was and Rocky Holcomb. Rocky
got knocked out.
Yeah, Rocky got knocked out. Even though he's claiming he wants a recount, that don't make no difference. He got knocked out.
Trying to play the race card. I'm not sure what that's all about.
Yeah, he tried. Yeah, man. It's really that whole race, and we may want to recap that. We may want to stick a pin in that, because and really get into the bare bones of that race, because that race was crazy, man. I mean, it was some of the mailers on both sides was kind of racy, at the end of the day, she probably won by 400 votes, give or take. But some of the mailers that I seen that was coming out of the Republican Party for Virginia and the Democratic Party of Virginia, it's kind of, you try to do anything to win, but it's kind of like, it was kind of tough, man. Some of that stuff was kind of racy, to the point where I had people, I was going to precincts, talking to people about John Bell and, in Cheryl Tupper's district. And people were like literally handing me mailers saying, take this stuff. Like, I don't want it. So it was a tough race.
Yeah, I haven't been following too much of it other than to hear that he is trying to challenge a recount, and he has been claiming that Cheryl race baited him.
Yeah.
So, both of those guys both Cheryl and Rocky are Caucasian, so I'm not really sure what's going on. I mean, other than, being associated with Gillespie, but the Stolly machine in Virginia Beach or on the south side is probably one of the worst that I've heard of, at least, especially with his, his brother being appointed to that clerk's position, which is basically like a no nonsense.
His brother, the crazy part about it is, Mike, is that he's the sheriff. And when you think about, okay, if I have a family member that's in the jail, or if I have a loved one that's in the jail, significant other, spouse, if I have an issue with the jail, who the person that I go to? I go to the Commonwealth Attorney for Virginia Beach. And guess who that is? It's his brother. So it's like, how can I, who do I deal with? Who do I talk to if I have an issue, what's going on in the jail? And then you say, well, okay, let me go to my delegate. Now, before this election, you would have to go to a Villanueva. You would have to go to Rocky Holcomb, who was his employee, or you have to go to his other brother, and it's Chris, and it's just, it was just crazy the setup that they had, and just basically how, and you can just tell that he was just able to run roughshod over Virginia Beach politics, and I'm hoping that Ralph Northam and Mark Henry winning Virginia Beach was a total shock to a lot of folks. I guarantee you, nobody predicted that. Nobody predicted that Mark Henry and Ralph Northam would win Virginia Beach. That Virginia Beach would go blue.
Yeah, it has been pretty red lately.
Yeah. And nobody's seen that coming, and in Chesapeake as well.
So is Stolly still the delegate? I don't even know.
Yeah, Chris Stolly is still a delegate. He ran unopposed. Chris Stolly ran against David Rose Carmack. David Rose Carmack ran a very good race, but unfortunately, he did very well in Norfolk. Mm-hmm. He didn't do so well in Virginia Beach because part of that district is in Norfolk, the other part of it is in Virginia Beach. He did very well competing with Chris Stolly in Norfolk, and he fell a little bit short in Virginia Beach. When you look at the numbers, you can tell it was a definite significant drop off.
Yeah, they had similar results to ours. Looks like it was about 10,000 to 13,000. So he got he lost by 43 to 56%. Looks like.
Right.
Definitely. There's a lot of stuff going on with that we can fill people in as things go on. So let's talk about statewide. I mean, you alluded to it earlier. I talked about it in an earlier segment that's at the beginning of the show. The Northam, the turnout across the state was incredible. I haven't looked at Virginia Beach in particular. Besides to say that they're the southern tip of Virginia Beach, I believe there was one article I saw somewhere that said like this one sliver of Virginia Beach, drove turnout for the Northam campaign. Obviously Justin Fairfax being the first African-American candidate on the statewide ballot to win since Doug Wilder. I mean, that was when I first came to Virginia in like 1989 or something, was when he was governor. So obviously a big win for the African-American community. Did you want to talk in general about how that's working out for that community? I mean, I talked a little bit earlier in the show about how when I was going door to door, I would tell people, that this election was important in the respect of fighting back against white supremacy and the racists.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that it was two factors. The fact that Justin Fairfax was on the ticket, African American community was definitely excited about that. But then also, it was also about it was letting Trump. It was a direct message to Donald Trump that we are going to turn out. We are not. We're going to step up. We're going to come out in bigger and bigger numbers, because not only did they African Americans voted for Ralph Northam in a higher percentages in terms of 87% of African Americans voted for Ralph Northam, which was a higher percentage than what Hillary got. Mm-hmm. Not only did they do that, they turnout was higher. So not only did they voted for him, they voted for him for Ralph Northam in a higher percentage in terms of 87%, but African Americans turned out on a presidential election level. So and they were not anticipating that whatsoever. Mm-hmm. When you listen to the John Fredericks, my good friend John Frederick,
John very well. Yeah.
He was freaking out. He was looking at the numbers and he was absolutely freaking out because they were not anticipating the number of African Americans coming out, because when they were told that they were getting 12% of the African American vote, they got excited because they were basing that 12% on turnout from African Americans in previous elections. What really, in terms of gubernatorial off-year elections, but when you look at when you look at the turnout from African Americans, we just blew it out the water. We blew their numbers out the water. And I think that was a large part of, yes, Justin Fairfax, a quality candidate with a quality message. You look at his background, graduated from Duke University and an attorney and great family, and just an all-around good guy. I like him because I've met him several times. I like him. He comes across as a person that's very personable. So you have a quality candidate, but it was also the Trump factor, an African American community sending a message to Donald Trump that, we're not putting up with you. We're gonna see you, even if you don't, if the Congress don't impeach you, we're gonna see you in 2020, and we're gonna come out and we're gonna show up. And I think that's what it was sending the message to, just as much as they were sending the message. They didn't have to be motivated. The African American community, and that was the beautiful thing, is that there wasn't a whole lot of advertising to the African American community this election cycle. One of the things that I was worried about, and people that were on the inside, political strategists, people that worked on campaigns in the past, they were nervous because we really didn't see the advertising dollars going to the African American radio stations that we really felt that should go towards them, or even the entertainment like BET and other stations like that. We really didn't see those dollars going to those get out to vote message, but they still turned out anyway. So that's really encouraging. So come presidential, if we do, just imagine what kind of turnout we can get if we do push those advertising dollars and really do a get out to vote messaging. Because like I said, they didn't need to really be motivated, because it seemed like in the numbers they were motivated just by the simple fact that they just wanted to send a message to Trump, and they wanted to get they were motivated to get the second African American elected to lieutenant governor. So I think they were equally excited about that prospect as well.
Yeah. So for those of you guys listening that don't know, so John Fredericks is a conservative talk radio host out of Chesapeake. Good guy. He actually was the Trump campaign chairman last year after Corey Stewart got kicked to the curb. But yeah, I've listened to his show a lot. I've called in a lot of Democrats call into his show, and he's actually kind of an inspiration because he's one of the main reasons why we're doing this show is because he is a pretty right-wing guy. He does agree with us on issues like raising the minimum wage and Medicaid expansion. But as a hardcore Trump guy, we felt like it was necessary to have kind of a counterbalance on the airwaves or on the interwebs, basically. So one of the main reasons why we started doing this podcast, and hopefully, John, if you're listening, all due respect. But I was unable to listen to his show, in the weeks leading up to the election, just because it's tough enough listening to it on any day, let alone when you're running a campaign. And I jokingly tell him, I call in sometimes because I'm like tired of yelling at the car radio, and right. I have to say something. But I did tune in on Wednesday after the election, and I was listening to the callers, and they were doing all this kind of same soul searching that Democrats and liberals were doing a year ago. And I wanted to call in and tell them basically what you said. It was about Trump. It was also about Medicaid expansion. I mean, I think Absolutely. That was really on the ballot this year. I made a lot of other arguments in my campaign about raising the minimum wage that I don't think really carried out at the statewide level. I mean, it was definitely part of the talking point, but I don't think it was really as crucial and as important as the rest of it. But I wanted to get that out of the way because going back to what you were talking about the low levels of advertising, I think I mentioned this earlier in the episode, but Ben Tribbett, who's I wouldn't say pundit. He's more like who does he work for? He's like an analyst, political analyst. And, he was saying that there was an inverse correlation between the amount of support that a candidate got from the House caucus, the Democratic House caucus, and the crossover votes that they got. So basically the Ralph Northam or Ed Gillespie votes that cross party lines to vote for this other person. So it almost seems like the party support actually hurt candidates in state races because there were Carter was one that was on the positive end of that, where he was like 9 points ahead of this other guy who was in a very similar part of the state. I can't remember the guy's name, but had like a loss by almost the same margin. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it might actually be better that there was less advertising to the African-American community and to just in general, because it seems like a lot of that, a lot of our organizing was done at the street level, was done at the on the down low, for lack of a better term, because I think when there was more advertising, or more media, I had an argument during our campaign with some of my staff about this very fact. You don't want to blast too loudly, hey, I'm a leftist, socialist, progressive, Black Lives Matter, atheist or whatever, because it's going to, some people on the other side that weren't planning on voting might be motivated to vote against you because of that very fact. So I guess I just want to be just trying to make a point about what you were saying, that maybe the fact that there wasn't a lot of advertising might have worked in our favor because it didn't really rile up the opposition as much as it would have as if there was more of a coordinated media campaign. So that just might be something to think about. I guess is what I'm saying. No,
absolutely. That could be like what I'm starting to call I thought about that, and I was thinking about Ossoff, my man down in Georgia. I had interns that was working for me for the Perriello campaign that they got paid jobs leaving Virginia, going down there because the money was just so enticing to go down there because so much money was getting poured down into that race and so much attention was getting paid to that race that I think that it may have hurt him ultimately. Because so much attention was, MSNBC was, doing specials and CNN was doing specials on the race, and they were, the national media was down there, for every day by day, doing little stories on about, this, that, and the third. And And I think that ultimately all that attention that he got, may have ended up hurting him in the long run, because you have folks there that may have said, you know what, they weren't even planning on voting, on the other side. But when they said all that attention that he was getting, I was like, okay, no, we got to shut this down. So, and I noticed that MSNBC and CNN, they really didn't get into the Gillespie Northam matchup. They didn't really get into it probably until, to me, like really in depth until a week prior.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I guess we could call that like a spotlight right. effect, basically.
Yeah, it was kind of like, they started talking about it, and it was only certain folks that were talking about it. Like Chris Matthews would talk about it. He would do a segment on it, but then you would watch Rachel Maddow, and she wouldn't talk about it at all. And it was kind of like they were picking and choosing, and like who would, it just seemed like they were being very strategic about bringing a whole lot of attention to it, maybe because their numbers were saying, hey, we got a shot at winning this thing. We don't want to draw a whole lot of attention to this thing, because we don't want the opposite side to think that we're making a big deal out of this, and to hurt us, because they saw what happened when they do descend upon. They descended upon Georgia when it came to Mr. Ossoff, and it seemed like it backfired.
All right. Well, we got to take a quick break here. We're rolling up on the 20-minute mark. I'll just say real quickly, maybe the same factor is affecting Roy more right now, so we'll see if that plays in our favor. Anyways, you're listening to the For Virginia podcast. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. Stand by. So Dave, now that you're done with the Bell campaign, what's next for you?
What's next for me in my immediate future is Councilwoman Ella Ward. We have local elections coming up in the city of Chesapeake, which will be in May of 2018. Yep. City council, school board elections. And I'm very excited. Well, let me just say, Councilwoman Ella Ward, she's running for re-election for her council seat. She's been a city council in the city of Chesapeake seems like forever. She's ran for Congress before, unsuccessfully. But she's still a city council person. She's the only Democrat elected official in the city of Chesapeake. So we definitely want to keep her seat. So I'll be managing her campaign. So I'm literally going from one campaign, jumping on another. I might do a little consulting work in the 2nd Congressional District, because I just want to get in the fight. I want to take Scott Taylor down. All right. I want to take him down so bad. All
right, we're gonna save that for next week. I definitely want to talk about CD2. Yes. We don't have enough time to get into it tonight. I just wanted to know what you're doing. But yes, thank you for bringing that up. Municipality elections are coming up in the spring.
Yes.
I'm not sure what I'm doing as far as that goes. We know that in Hampton we're losing Will Moffitt, who is a legend in the city. Great speaker. He hasn't officially announced it, but it's pretty much.
I've heard that too.
He's not denying it, so I'll take it at face value. But we're gonna have to find somebody to replace him. That's gonna be tough work. So I'm definitely not interested in running myself, but we'll be looking to find someone who has the courage to stand up. I think. One of the things that I'm starting to realize, and that I hope other people are starting to realize, is that we're going to have to take much more of an activist stance with regards to our city government. Not necessarily the sanctuary city issue, for example, but being more proactive with regards to fighting climate change or worker protections and stuff like that. We need people who are going to go out on a limb. And I know that's a little bit difficult in Virginia, being a Dillon rule state and all that. But I encourage everyone to keep up and keep at it. Dave, we are almost at the end of our time here. I will leave you with the last word before we go out tonight. You have the microphone, 30 seconds.
Real quick. Like you said, we have the next elections. I know everybody's getting excited about November 2018, but we also got to remember that we do have local elections, city council, school board elections coming up also in the spring of 2018. We need to start organizing for those elections. If you have city council elections, you have school board elections, take a look at the people that you think can run in those positions. Look at yourself. Seriously take a look at those opportunities. And then also, we got to keep the pressure on the DCCC. They say that they're going to start going after city council and school board races. We got to keep their feet to the fire and say, hey, you made the commitment that you were going to start going after and competing in city council and school board races. We got city council and school board races coming up. We got to keep the pressure to make them keep their word that they're going to make that commitment. And we got to make sure that happens.
All right, that's all the time we got for this week. We appreciate everyone that tuned in. Thank you for your support and all your shares. So please check out our website, share us on social media, and your financial support is always appreciated. We have an ActBlue account, and we just started a Patreon account. So I'm going to share those in the show links, and any support you can give us will be greatly appreciated. This is the For Virginia Podcast, episode 23. Please submit your feedback on our website on Facebook or by emailing info@forvirginia.org. We'll continue working hard to bring you the news, information, and analysis to help keep the progressive revolution moving forward in Virginia through 2018 and beyond. My name is Michael Wade.
My name is David Washington.
Thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.